Hello, Miami. This is 305 Sports Now, your home podcast and channel for all things Miami sports related. I am Will, and once again, Merry Christmas to everybody out there, and now Happy New Year. All right, and what great way to bring in the new year than to bring in a very special guest on this show. You guys know him as the host of the Locked On Canes podcast and also a WQAM regular, Mr. Alex Donno. How's it going, Alex?
Going very well. I hope you and all of your followers and viewers had a great Christmas. I had a really good one myself, and just hope everyone has a blessed new year as well.
Thank you, Alex. We greatly appreciate it. We really appreciate it. By the way, if you guys didn't see this, Alex bought his son a very adorable Miami Dolphin outfit.
He loves it.
We're suffering as Dolphin fans, but we're good to see that you can put smiles on some people's faces and so on.
Yeah, he was not happy when I told him that the Dolphins lost yesterday and how they lost. He was not happy, but he still loves his Dolphins uniform.
Yeah, like we all love our fans no matter what. So that's what goes on. All right, so you're on. I want to have you on here because you have a very good expertise, a good grasp of what is all things Canes, and Miami Hurricanes had a magnificent signing period. They have a top 5 class with or without Kormani McLean. So what I want to go over today is basically our favorite guys of which they signed both on offense and defense, and so I want to know on the offensive side of the ball, who are you most looking forward to seeing put on that uniform and hitting the rock real soon?
Oh man, who am I most looking forward to? I would probably say Mark Fletcher, the 4-star running back out of American Heritage. I mean, it's tough. I could have given you like more than a half dozen names, but Fletcher was one of the most recent commits. It was pretty late, just a few days before signing day, that he picked Miami. And he gives me kind of some Willis McGahee vibes when it comes with the power that he runs with and the moves that he has and how he can drag tacklers with them along the way. So really complete running back and very experienced. I mean, just played in the state championship game, within the last couple of weeks and lost to Miami Central, but a very accomplished high school career for him. And I always enjoy watching running backs, and Miami's got a couple of good ones to enjoy in this class because Mark Fletcher is more the bigger, stronger power back. And Miami also brought Chris Johnson from Dillard, who is more of a quick, explosive home run hitter type of back. But I don't know. I like to watch guys run over tacklers and all that. So Mark Fletcher is probably the guy on the offensive side that I look forward to, but I could have gone a number of different directions with that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I love Mark Fletcher. And if you look at the film, everybody talks about him as this physical bull rush, type of tailback, but he actually could juke you if he's in a one-on-one situation with the right safety, cornerback, linebacker. He could take you on for an additional 15-20 yards without exactly having to run you over. The thing about Mark is that he also can pass protect as well, and he's a pretty good pass catching running back as well. Which what you mentioned is Willis McGahee okay, Willis McGahee was very good at catching the football as well. Mark ended his career at American with 53 touchdowns, 49 of them on the ground, and over 4,400 yards rushing, for American Heritage. He even scored in that state championship game against Central, which also means, we all know that the schedule American Heritage and Central play with, they play very elite competition within their divisions at the high school level. So we know that they'll be able to take that experience into the next level and the NCAA and the ACC, et cetera.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you like to have players like that. The same can be said for, his teammate, Damari Brown. Not to get too ahead of myself, but one of the things that I love about the cornerback, Damari Brown from American Heritage, is the type of schedule he plays, the type of experience he has. And I can say the same thing about Ruben Bain from Miami Central, who's, to me, like, he might be the most accomplished high school football player of all time because he's put up ridiculous stats and he's won 4 straight titles, and they just had a perfect season at Central. So like Ruben Bain, to me, he might be the best high school player ever.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll get into the defense in a couple minutes or so, but also sticking with the offense, I like a couple guys. I like Riley Williams, 6'6", big time red zone target, as well. And then, of course, I really also like Robbie Washington, out of Palmetto, 17 career touchdowns, for Palmetto. And so I think that at the slot position, at least at the wide receiver position, Miami's pretty stacked.
Yeah, and I love Ray Joseph as well. He and Robbie are somewhat similar in their characteristics. Ray is super fun to watch because not only is he really explosive, if you can get him the football into space, he's going to take it to the house. He reminds me a little bit of a Roscoe Parrish type. He's also, despite being on the smaller side, Ray is really difficult to tackle. I mean, it's great if you get in like one of those YouTube rabbit holes, as I'm sure you've done before, where people start to watch his highlights from high school at Miami Edison. You'll see every time somebody thinks they have him wrapped up, he's going to bounce off the tackle or spin off the tackle. And those are the type of playmakers Miami needs. Not only receivers, whether it be in the slot in his case or on the outside, who can, score 60, 70-yard touchdowns. He can do that. But he can also get you some hard extra yards by bouncing off and breaking out of tackles.
Yeah, they both have one thing in common. They're very shifty.
Yeah.
And I think if you're a slot receiver, you need to be shifty. You need to make guys miss, especially if you're going to be in space or be expected, to go into the middle of the field and where you'll meet basically the hardest hitters on any team, whether it's Clemson, Pitt, Vatech, or even Florida State, as well. But yeah, you're right about Ray Joseph. I've seen Ray Joseph on one of his clips. They tried going high on him and he ducked on the guy and took off and scored a touchdown. So yeah, you're right. He's not easy to bring down despite his small stature.
Yeah, but when I'm honestly, even this goes on both sides of the ball, but especially on offense, what they're doing in the trenches, to me is remarkable. I mean, to bring in an offensive line class where not only do you have guys like Samson Okunlola, 5-star offensive tackle, Francis Mauigoa, who's a 5-star offensive tackle who could play all 5 positions on the O-line if you need to, Tommy Kinsler, Frankie Tinalau, Antonio Tripp, who he's played primarily at guard, but it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up playing center at Miami. And Tripp, and he's been, I think he's really underrated, and Kinsler's probably a little bit underrated as well. But in one single recruiting class, they're revolutionizing the offensive line, and they get Javion Cohen in the transfer portal from Alabama, who was a starter at left guard for the Crimson Tide for the last 2 years. And according to Pro Football Focus, in over 1,600 snaps, didn't give up a single sack. Like, there was not a single sack credited to Javion Cohen. So you're talking about 6 difference makers coming in on the offensive line. Not all of them are going to play right away. Obviously, Cohen can plug and play immediately because he's got SEC experience already. So I wouldn't worry about him, and he's older. I also think that Mauigoa and Okunlola can both play a lot, if not start, as true freshmen. And then, the other 3 younger guys, I think, can develop relatively quickly. So, if you look at the offensive line, it's like a complete revolution what Miami's doing right now, which is not a surprise. When Mario Cristobal is your head coach, that's always an area he's going to have success and prioritize because he's a former O-lineman and a former O-line coach. But I think that's where Miami's making the biggest upgrade on offense. And when you have better offensive line play, it's going to raise the floor for your entire offense. Like, you're not going to be having some of the same issues last year when you couldn't run the ball at times, you couldn't protect your quarterback at times. It's going to make everybody look better.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. As a matter of fact, I had the entire line here on my list. All right, as top, everything. I mean, I've mentioned on the show before that I think this could be, if on paper at least, the best offensive line we've ever had as far as class goes. Since the 2001 class that, pretty much produced a bunch of NFL draft picks and kept Ken Dorsey clean, for almost 2 seasons, because I mean, Mauigoa is going to, he's going to pan out. I mean, he's not necessarily a left tackle. He could be a right tackle. He could be a guard as well. He's very diverse in terms of his athleticism, his power. Okunola is a flat out beast. I mean, if people haven't watched his huddle, he eats people for breakfast. That's why they call him the pancake honcho. I've seen him just pick up linebackers and toss them around like they're dolls. I mean, it's unbelievable what he's capable of doing. Kinsler is underrated. He's also a 2-way player. A lot of people don't know that. He was a solid offensive lineman in high school and a very good defensive lineman as well in high school as well. So if they want to, let's say they're stacked, with too many linemen, they have a deficit, and D-line, which is what they have right now. They're looking for more defensive tackles. You can move Kinsler into that position, and he could fill in a hole perfectly for you, as far as that goes. So this group of linemen that Mario's brought in, from Tripp, to Mauigoa, to Tinalau, to Okunola, to Mauigoa, all these guys, they are primed for success, especially with the system that Mario wants to run.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch because they've got some good returning players on the O line as well. Zion Nelson hasn't been able to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, he could play. He could start at left tackle or at right tackle. I'm very high on Jalen Rivers, who can play guard or tackle. And Ez Cooper, who looked fantastic at right guard last year as a true freshman last year, so he's going to be even bigger and even more experienced this year. And Ja'Kai Clark could obviously be your starting center as he was for most of last season. And there's a Lawrence Seymour is another name, Logan Sagapalu, a former Oregon player. So there's and I always stress the phrase on paper because I know you got to see how it actually pans out because like a year ago on paper, I thought Miami had an awesome running back room, but nobody could stay healthy. And Thad Franklin just didn't work with him last year. But like on paper, the offensive line looks really good this year.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I continue to say on paper, if it pans out, I don't say they're gonna be good, in particular. But yeah, the way the line looks, and you're right, the returning players like Sagapolo, as well. I like Ines Cooper. Ines Cooper is just a flat out monster. He was like 325 pounds as an incoming freshman. I think he finished topped off the season at 350. So yeah, I mean we've seen, with Michigan's success at running the football, big linemen work, especially when it comes to wanting to run the football. If you can guys that clog up holes and, could pass protect and also run block, the sky's the limit for any football team.
Yeah, and you say it right there because and all these linemen that Miami is bringing in, they're all athletic as well. Like they have range. Like they're not just big statues who can just only pass protect. These guys can get downfield as well. Like you talked about what a great athlete Kinsler is. I think that's an important thing for people to remember. And it's 100% the case with Okunlola and Maui Goa. Like especially one of the things I remember watching Maui Goa's tape that jumps off the page is how far downfield he gets. I mean, he seems to really enjoy mauling people at the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, can't wait to see them, in action. I can't wait to see. And the good thing about this line is that there are Mario's guys, like, from the very beginning, with the exception of Connor Liu, who ended up decommitting and going to Auburn. Understandably so, he wants to be a pilot. They were sold in with the Miami Hurricanes when there was rumors about, decommits and stuff like that, because of the fact that Canes were not having a good season. Maui Goa, Tripp especially, were amongst the leaders on Twitter and on social media that said, no, we're not taking any more visits because we don't leave any shadow of a doubt. In particular, we are going to be Miami Hurricanes, and we're going to be the ones to take this program to the next level where it needs to be. So these guys are bought in right into the Cristobal Maribel system, which you could kind of tell with some players this past season. That wasn't the case, especially the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. Especially when, they clearly had some culture issues for the last several years, guys not showing up to meetings and, breaking curfew, and there really not being any repercussions for it. I think this coaching staff went out of their way to try and reestablish some rules or establish some rules that should have been in place in the first place. And it's one of the things that sometimes happens when you have coaching changes. It doesn't happen everywhere. Like clearly, Lincoln Riley didn't have as many first year issues at USC, and he's a tremendous coach. I give, Riley nothing but respect. He's one of the best coaches in the country. But as far as Miami goes, I think you had a lot of players that just didn't really buy in, and then you lose a couple games early in the season you probably should win, and I think it only makes things worse from there. So I think overhauling the culture and getting people in who actually want to be in there and specifically want to play for these coaches, it's going to make all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Now moving to the defensive side of the ball, my guy, my dude, Ruben Bain, 57 career sacks. And he's only a 4-star because he's 2 inches shorter than what made him a 5-star. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard from these composites. I mean, give me a break. You cannot argue with 57 sacks. And it's not just 57 sacks against, let's say, Coral Park Senior High School. Okay. This guy's playing Columbus. He sacked their quarterback, I think, 3 times. All right. He played against American. He got to that quarterback a couple times. He's played Northwestern, which
it's IMG. He got 3 sacks against IMG.
Yeah, 3 sacks against IMG, 4 sacks against Northwestern. I mean,
yeah,
guy's a beast. So when I saw he's a 4-star, I'm like, how's this guy a 4-star? But I think this is my prediction. I think Ruben Bain is the can't miss recruit. I think he's going to end up, he's the one that I'm telling you right now, not a bust. Not going to be a bust. His footwork, his hands, his power, his speed, his intelligence, his integrity, setting edges. I think he's got all. I think he's got it all. That's my guy. That's my dude.
Yeah, he's incredible. And like from what I understand about parts of the criteria for the star system, a lot of it is based on how players project out in the NFL, not even so much in college. So it's like they're basically, like you said, being a couple inches too short. I think that's a big part of the criteria. They're like, hey, when this guy tries to go to the NFL, and I think he probably will end up in the NFL, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself there. But the fact that he's like, listed at 6'2", which usually means in reality around 6'1", something like that, that he's, a little bit undersized is going to hurt him at that level. But, he's very underrated for all the reasons that you mentioned about his high school career. He's kind of in the complete opposite situation of Collins Achiampong, who's one of my favorite players in the class, he's also a 4-star, but basically for opposite reasons as Ruben Bain, because you could basically say, just based on what he's done on the field, Bain should be a 5-star. And for Achiampong, based on what he's done on the field, he should be a 3-star, if even that, because he's barely played. Like, he's barely played American football. He was playing as a true freshman. And then the high school he was at in California canceled their football program during COVID. I don't think they brought it back. So he transferred to a different school to play as a senior. And then he was injured for most of his senior year. He grew up in Ghana playing soccer and basketball, very little American football. But Achiampong is a 4-star because he's 6'7" and he's oozing with that athleticism. I mean, flexible, nimble feet, very quick. I mean, he looks like an NFL edge rusher, whereas Ruben Bain does not. And like, I love those two players, but for different reasons. Because with Achiampong, I'm absolutely in love with his potential and with his personality, because he, grew up in a tough upbringing, not a wealthy family. His mother has been sick. He's trying to take care of his mother. He's super motivated and driven, which I love. Not to say that, that anybody else in the class isn't, but his story is like very unique, coming over as an exchange student to the USA. And I can't wait to see how he develops at the collegiate level. Whereas Ruben Bain is more plug and play. Like, he's obviously still going to keep developing, but, there were probably some games last season where you could have thrown him right onto that D line on 3rd downs and longs, and he could have just gone out there and done his thing. Like, he's a lot closer to being a finished project right now.
Yeah, like, one more thing about Ruben Bain. Miami had trouble this year with athletic quarterbacks. They had trouble, basically catching up to them. And some of the film that I've seen, Ruben Bain ate those guys up, especially in Northwestern. So I think that, with the struggles that we had against the running quarterback, if in the right position, Ruben's not going to let that guy get away, so I think that's one thing and one advantage I will say that being 6'2" versus 6'4" will give Ruben is that he has a lower center of gravity. So if he needs to swim under, one of these bigger 6'4", 6'5" offensive tackles, it might be a little difficult, because of his quick footwork and how fast he is and his hands to be able to stop him as well. So you might still need to bring in that running back to chip him, because of the fact that, that you can't really totally engage him, because if he gets lower than you, he might actually beat you on on a play. He's not a small safety, or he's not an undersized linebacker. He's a pure hardcore bull rushing defensive end that's going to get to the quarterback by any means necessary. And again, his technique is flawless in my opinion. So I think that, being a little shorter might in some cases be able to help him out, depending on who he's obviously who's covering him, in the O-line.
Yeah, a few days ago, I was talking with Larry Bluestein, and I think it was him that I was talking to, who brought up the possibility that Miami might want to put some weight on him and move him inside. So he's definitely got the skill set to do it. But at the same time, I want to say, I haven't looked at this in a few weeks, but I'm pretty sure if you go to Ruben Bain's Twitter account, like in his bio, he goes out of his way to say DE, not tackle. So that sounds to me like a guy who wants to play edge rusher, not defensive tackle. So if you were to try to move him inside, I think it would take some convincing.
Yeah, well, he's big enough, but he's 250 and he's going to put on weight. So I thought that by his size, you could make him into like a Mesidor type. You could put him in the interior, and if in some cases put him, at the edge. So I mean, either or, will work for me. But I think he's a pure edge rusher. No matter what, Anybody else says any other favorite? I know you mentioned Collins and Champong. Any other favorites on the defensive recruiting show that you got?
Well, I love Robert Stafford. I don't think gets nearly enough love. The cornerback out of the what do they call that? The Space Coast. I always try to say, I think O Galley is how you say his high school name. I always butcher it. And people from that area, because I try to say like you golly sometimes, that the people from that area are like, what are you doing? You're butchering the name of the high school. But no, I think Robert Stafford is he's well built to play physical press man coverage. I think Damari Brown is as well. But the reason why I bring up Robert Stafford is he doesn't get nearly enough love because, Damari Brown being from American heritage, he gets a lot more talked about. I don't think I've had the pleasure of meeting Damari in person. I did meet Robert Stafford in person once, and he looks bigger than he's listed, which is very unusual because usually when you see a guy listed at 5'11", they're like really 5'9", 5'10". I mean, he's listed at 5. He looked every bit of 5'11", like 5'11", 6 foot range. It almost made me wonder if like his listed height might be like out of date, like from his sophomore or junior season or something. But he looks bigger in person than he does on film, which I think is going to be interesting. So I think he probably deserves more love. I love all the linebackers in this class. I think Popo Aguirre is going to end up being a monster, and Jaden Wayne from the outside pressuring quarterbacks. I think he's no, sorry, not Jaden Wayne is a player on the D line who I think is going to be great. I meant to say Malik Bryant at linebacker. I think it's going to be a real terror just going after quarterbacks, and Jaden Wayne on the D line, the same thing. So I think there's a lot of quality coming in this class.
Yeah, Malik's physically ready to just go in already. He's at 6'2", 236. But I think the better overall linebacker is going to be Raul Aguirre because we've talked about in the past. Malik, obviously I haven't seen full everything on Malik, but Malik's good at rushing the passer, stopping the run, and getting guys in space like on swing passes or bubble screens. I've seen Raul stop guys on the run, sack the quarterback, and get guys in coverage. So I think that in the long run, Raul's going to be the more serviceable linebacker in terms of you can put him in any type of position. Like Jerome Baker for the Dolphins. He hasn't had the best year this year, but Jerome Baker's that guy. Jerome Baker's a guy who can stop the run, but if you need him to cover on Mark Andrews over in Baltimore, he's the guy that could do that.
Yep.
But I think Raul's going to be that same guy, in particular. So again, another guy is Damari Brown. I do like Damari. I think Robert Stafford also doesn't get a lot of credit for two reasons. One, his school, right? Like you and I can't say the name.
Yeah.
I butcher it too. And also he was locked in all the way through, whereas Damari took his time to commit. So he got a lot of attention for that. So I think that's
and it was also like with Damari, it was also who you were recruiting against because Alabama really, really wanted him.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's been so long with Stafford. I can't even remember who Miami was recruiting against. But obviously with Damari, I remember Alabama and Florida State were also in the mix. And that always makes it look even better. Like, oh, we got this player that Alabama wanted. And he's great. Like, I'm not taking anything away from Damari. I wanted to talk about Stafford because Damari, we've talked so much about him the last couple of weeks, and Stafford hasn't been talked about.
Yeah, no, and they're both lockdown corners, and I think that's something Miami needs. Miami got burned over the top this season badly.
Oh,
it was really bad, especially against Middle Tennessee. So I think that guys that could stay with their man, which I've seen Damari do, on film. I think that's very an important get for the Canes. That's why I'm not completely sold on removing Kevin Steele as D coordinator, because I've seen flashes that Miami, despite a very terrible year. Like, for example, with the front seven, I've seen flashes where Miami has been successful. And when they actually moved Cam Kitchens a bit deeper, where he's able to cover more ground, Miami's gave up less big plays, and Cam Kitchens really had a couple of good games because of that. So I'm curious to see with this kind of roster tweak, what Kevin Steele could do. Yeah, I'm not still sold on Josh Gaddis. I've told you that a couple times.
Nobody is.
No, at all. That's why I told you online. I'm like, he better not screw this up. I mean, there's no way he could screw this up, especially what Mario's got him. But I like to see what Kevin Steele could do with a Damari, with a Stafford, with an Antoine Jackson as well. And hopefully with our next guy, which is Kormani McLean. What's going on? Have you heard anything? He's a mystery. Is this kid? I've heard things of like his essay. You mentioned today on your show his ACT scores. That's been something that's been floating online. I've heard things about possibly another NIL deal coming in from maybe Alabama or Colorado. Dion's now nipping in his ear. I mean, what is going on?
Yeah, the more I hear, the less I know,
Okay.
because you start to, at a certain point, when you hear so many different stories that are people supposedly know things and everybody's saying something different. I saw at a certain point I've got to take a step back and say, like, wow, there's people out there lying. I don't know who's lying and who's not lying. The all the academic stuff has been a very popular theory since like late last week, Thursday, Friday. I think around Friday is when people started to talk about, oh, could be an issue with the transcripts, could be an issue with the grades or the test scores and all that. Like, I know something, and again, I feel like this is just a theory people are coming up with. So Cormani played most of his high school career. He was at Lake Gibson, and then he transferred to Lakeland. And some people say that, like, Lake Gibson, there was a problem with his transcripts from the earlier high school to the later. The thing is, like, I don't know, right? Because the first couple days it was all about, oh, Colorado, Alabama trying to get in, and it's NIL, NIL, NIL. And then the last couple of days it's been, no, it's grades. He's fully locked in. I think the big reason why nobody really knows is Kormani, he's just really quiet. This is something that, I did a crossover episode with the Locked On Gators host late last week, and he brought it up because, everyone from the Gators side, when he verbally committed to Miami over Florida, all the Gator people were shocked. It's like, wait, I thought we had this guy locked in. And then you actually take a step back and you realize he never actually said anything. There was a lot of people assuming, oh, he's solid, he's coming to us. And I think the same thing might be happening here, that he's not really saying anything. I mean, outside of his mother tweeting out on Wednesday that he wasn't going to be signing on Wednesday, like nothing else. You've got, coaches of his at Lakeland that are doing some interviews and like kind of trying to speak for him, but they even say, we don't know what he's thinking. Like nobody really knows. I think the only thing we do know, there are two things we do know. Obviously, he's not signing till February at the earliest because the early window is closed now. And it has been confirmed he is not graduating Lakeland in January or in December. So he's not graduating until May or June, whenever the school year ends, which means he can't be an early enrollee. So we don't know why he's not graduating. Is it because of grades or test scores? Like nobody knows. Maybe he decided I don't want to, I don't want to finish early. Nobody really knows anything, but hopefully, I can say I'm kind of optimistic he's going to be a Miami Hurricane, but nobody really knows at this point. And so the next like month and 5 days are going to be really interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm optimistic as well, only because his social media hasn't changed.
Right.
He's still seen as still committed to the Canes. He still has that post of himself in a Canes uniform, basically saying, "I'm not going anywhere." So that keeps me optimistic. But he just doesn't say anything, and that's what gets a lot of the. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to bash a 17, 18-year-old kid. I mean, that's not what I do. But that's what gets a lot of the Canes fans angry, that he's just not, hey, oh, it's my grades, or no, I just want to finish with my friends, and stuff like that. Oh, I miss my. I mean, he's not saying anything, and I think this was driving everybody crazy, And again, not trying to bash him, but I also think that kind of overshadowed his other teammates who did sign, because a lot of focus, ESPN, for
Yeah.
goodness sakes, did a story on him not committing on that day, as the only holdout. So for early signing period that Mario thought he was going to have, basically ink to paper, so those are things that really drive people crazy. In reference to Cormani, I think he's going to sign based upon, usually you see signs on social media, when guys are thinking about either transferring or not committing, they remove anything from the schools about the school on their page, i.e. Avante Williams. He did that earlier in the year.
Mhm.
You know, he hasn't done that. But I still think, it's something that, again, I understand why the fan base is alienated with him, because it's become the Kormani McLean show in many occasions. But I just want to know if you had any insight, since you talked to a lot of people.
No, especially not since let's say I talked to three different people who are usually pretty well connected. When all three of them are telling me something different, that's when I've just got to be like, I got to throw my hands up, because
Yeah.
that's kind of what's happening, right? That I'm being told like different things, because you start to feel a little bit burned, because I can go back to Thursday morning and somebody basically told me, like, don't even worry about it, he's going to sign by Friday. And didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, clearly your info was off, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if they were hearing from somebody on Cormani's side, more likely from the Miami side, but it's a certain point where it's like when people who are insiders on certain things are on the outside on this one, I really don't know. The less I hear, the more I hear, the less I know.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is that with or without him, Miami still has a top 5 class. And we're pretty solid at the cornerback position. Adding him would be a bonus, per se. Do I want him? Absolutely. He's tall. He's a complete ball hawk. You can't argue with 15 picks, with Cormani. I mean, he's an absolute ball hawk. He's tall. I like tall corners personally.
Oh,
He's
I love
fast.
him.
Yeah, his length. I mean, you can't. He does have a little Deion Sanders in him in the sense that he was also he could play wide receiver and also be a cornerback as well. So he's got that going for him. But again, he's a kid. I've said this on the show. He's going to make decisions. He's allowed to change his mind. If he wants to go to Colorado, if he wants to go to Alabama, don't go to Florida, please. Not that school.
One thing I think the ship sailed at Florida.
I think so too.
Obviously, it can change within the next month, but I don't hear a lot of optimism from the Florida side, and even their 24/7 insider Blake Alderman, who covers Florida, is. I think he said something in the last couple of days about how he doesn't really hear any buzz. So if it is somewhere else, probably would be Colorado or Alabama.
Yeah, I think so too. But I do optimistically believe in February he will be a Cane. I'm just saying that based upon what I've seen in his social media. But again,
I hope.
He's been very quiet. All right, before we end, again, you and I have this in common. We're both DC fans. All right, in particular. So I wanted to get your take on what in the world is going on in the world of Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, and James Gunn versus The Rock. What do you think, man? What have you heard?
Well, the first thing, you're way ahead of this compared to me, because it was actually, I didn't even know any of this was going on until, I don't know, 2-3 nights ago. My wife was telling me about it. And the reason why she was telling me about it is she's a big fan of The Witcher. So there's the intersection there with Henry Cavill. So she was telling me about that because he's not coming back to The Witcher because he was locked in with DC, and I guess James Gunn is firing him now. He's not going to be Superman anymore. It's like a whole thing. So I learned all about it from my wife. I definitely, I don't know if you agree with me. You probably do, but if you don't, whatever. But a lot of my favorite DC movies in recent years have been kind of the standalones, right? Like I loved the Joker movie. I loved the Batman. The actual, like the Justice Leagues, whether it was the Snyder cut or the crappier one, the Justice Leagues, Batman versus Superman, Aquaman. I love the first Wonder Woman movie, Wonder Woman 84, garbage, but I love the first Wonder Woman movie. But for the most part, like the actual DC universe, the crossover stuff, I haven't liked those movies. I've liked like the darker, grittier standalone ones. So I don't know, man, if James Gunn can find a way to like get that sort of vibe like into, movies where we see more of like a universe established, I'd be interested to see it because, everything that they've done to this point in trying to make all the Justice League stuff work, it hasn't worked for me in the way that Marvel has gotten their stuff together in the last, 12, 15 years.
Yeah. The thing, okay. I actually liked the Snyder Cut Justice League. I thought it was long.
Better. It was better.
Yeah,
I liked better than the
Josh Whedon was terrible, especially
awful.
When Batman was jumping up and down smiling. That just didn't work for me.
Yeah, it was a disgrace.
Yeah, exactly. So I liked Man of Steel. I'll be very honest with you. I enjoyed Man of Steel. I understood why they went a little darker. I like Man of Steel. I like the first Wonder Woman film in particular. I didn't think part 2 was that bad. My issue with part 2, well, I mean, they threw it. They wanted to throw Cheetah in there because she's a more established villain, and it didn't work very well. So, but yeah, I agree with you on that one in terms of, but I did like it. I didn't hate it as much as you did, but I didn't like, but I did enjoy it. My thing is, you and I are in sports, and we know that, when a coach comes in, he wants his own people, and that's why I see James Gunn. He wants his own people. But here's the problem. Most of the time when a coach gets fired, the coach and the staff is not popular. So they don't mind change. As bad as, and I personally don't like Zack Snyder as a storyteller. I think that he does other people's stories well, like 300 and Watchmen. But when he creates his own, it doesn't really make sense sometimes. But he's
That's a
very
great point. Yeah.
yeah, but he's great at casting. I mean, he's great at finding acting talent. So like Gal Gadot, Henry Cavill, Jason Momoa, they're very well cast. Especially Henry Cavill, Superman.
Mm-hmm.
So people like them. And as much as Man of Steel was divisive, as far as like, oh, it's too dark, oh, it's fine, just give him a chance. People liked Henry Cavill. So
Yes.
to get rid of him, I could understand why you have so many people going after James Gunn.
Mm-hmm.
In that particular case. So, but I agree with you. Like, I'm at the point right now. I was like, well, you better not mess up. That's the only thing I will say. Don't mess up, because if you do, no one's gonna forgive you.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, I think it makes you kind of appreciate, just from a commercial standpoint, how good of a job Disney does. Like, I find the storytelling of Marvel, I find it to be just very, very safe, the way that they do it. Like, it's just popcorn algorithms. Like, it's not really art. It's just like, all right, we're gonna, good enough storytelling, and we're gonna have enough, quality effects and good casting and CGI. Like, very safe movies. But there's no guarantee you hit those out of the park, and they're clearly hitting it out of the park, because people go crazy for those movies, and the way that they weave in so many different characters, so many standalone films into the Avengers movies. Like, it just go like, it's not that easy the way that they do it. And DC, when it comes to before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, most anybody would have told you, like, out of the top 3 superheroes, for most people, it would have been Spider-Man, Batman, Superman. So like 2 out of the 3 were DC properties, and yet they still can't find a way to really hit their universe out of the park. So it goes to show you, it's not that easy of a thing to do.
No, definitely not. And DC, again, instead of following their own formula, they wanted to do Marvel, but they sped up their process a little too fast.
Oh, way too. They were playing catch up. Yeah,
exactly.
Like they decided like 7-8 years later, oh yeah, we need to do that.
Yeah, instead of trying to build in their own thing, and now they're in a mess right now. So
yeah.
So like I said, James Gunn better not mess up. That's the one thing, because again, he's letting go of people that are popular. But then again, but then also the rumors, again, the internet. Oh no, that doesn't mean that they're always going to be gone. We might do a Crisis on Infinite Earth where you might see Henry Cavill come in and dude, just do your thing, bro, and just do not mess up. That's the only thing I'm going to tell you. Alex, thank you so much. All right, for doing the show again. We greatly appreciate having you on. Again, if you want to hear more of Mr. Alex Donno, tune in to Locked On Canes. You can listen to it on YouTube or any single podcasting platform that you're interested in, whether it's Spotify, Apple, Google, etc. You can also hear him every so often on WQAM. All right, he fills in sometimes for Hockman and Crowder, Joe Rose. Tobin, he was very busy, I will say, this holiday season.
Yeah, I'm going to be in for Tobin the rest of the week, actually, from Tuesday to Friday. Yeah.
Nice. Have fun with Leroy Horde.
Yes, I will. Leroy's a blast.
Yeah, he is. He's very good at going back and forth with Brendan. I think it's very entertaining.
He was the last time I was on with him. It was like right before this Dolphins losing streak started, and he jumped all over me for saying that I'm still not convinced that Tua is a franchise quarterback. And I don't know, man. I'm feeling like maybe I might have known something with the way these last few games have gone.
Yeah, we'll see. In my case regarding Tua, I'm not going to ignore what he did for previous weeks. So sure. We'll see how the season ends. That's just the way I am with him. But I will say this. I've been hard on the defense this year, especially on the road. But this past game against the Packers, that was all him. Joe Rose was nice when he said 2 out of 3 were his fault. I think all 3 interceptions were his fault. I
think so too.
Yeah, so that's my thing. That's my thing with Tua, as far as quarterback. But we'll see. We'll see how they end the season. And listen, man, they've invested a lot in this guy. Draft picks. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. The running backs, offensive linemen. So he's got to produce. I mean, that's the one thing I will say.
Yeah.
All right.
I hear you,
Alex. Thank you very much once again. All right. Again, Locked On Canes, WQAM for Brendan and Tobin, wherever you get your podcast, or also you can listen to them on YouTube. Once again, I am Will. Stay safe. God bless. See you soon.